We're live. All right. Well, good. Well, I guess depends where you are in the world. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whatever. Good middle of the night, maybe some places. I think we might have. I know we at least have one international person on today's webinar because I'm looking at them on the screen right now. But I want to welcome everybody here. Today we're going to be talking about personal brands versus corporate brands in accounting. Really an interesting topic. I'm excited about it. We have a good friend of mine and an expert on it, Rob Brown, with us today. Hey, Rob, looking forward to this conversation with you.
It's such a great topic, Randy, and you're hitting right at the heart of stuff that I feel really passionate about and that I've studied a lot about. So hopefully I can give some value to your audience today and they can understand my international accent.
Well, I think they will understand, and I think they will get a lot of insights out of it today. A little housekeeping before we get going. This is available for CPE, so there's a couple requirements you have as attendees today. You need to be logged in for at least 50 minutes. You have to answer at least 3 of the 4 polling questions, and if you meet those requirements, you will have your certificate emailed to you at the email address you registered with. So just be aware. Check the spam, junk email, because occasionally things go in there. And if you still don't see it after that, reach out to us. But this should be within a few days that you will receive this. And I think it might be faster than that. And Haley or Mark can put something in the chat if I'm wrong on that. But yes, we are available for CPE. Quick introduction. I'm Randy Crabtree. I will be moderating this discussion today. Rob is the one full of information that he'll be sharing with us today. I'm very fortunate I get to do these types of things quite often and really enjoy it. And Rob, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate that. A few years ago, I'm a former high school math teacher, and so I enjoyed the numbers. I'm a part qualified accountant for your audience. A few years ago, I wrote this book, Build Your Reputation. It's on Amazon. You don't need to buy it. I'll give you a lot of great things that you can get from it today. But I was always fascinated by, in a sea full of people that look and sound the same, how do you stand out? And why should you stand out? And we live in a world, Randy, don't we, where people are technically brilliant and super smart, but often a little bit socially awkward. It's not the given thing to sell yourself or push yourself forward or personally market yourself. But to give a little bit of context for today, I host a show myself that you've been on as a guest called the Accounting Influencers Podcast. And the whole emphasis of that show is helping the accounting leaders and professionals to be more visible and vocal in their role and more relevant and more informed and more insightful so that they've got more authority, more credibility. And that might be within the firm as a leader and a driver of culture. And it might be externally to drive client engagement and showcase domain expertise in particular areas. So as we'll set this up, it's really important that you have credibility attached to your name as well as the brand of your firm. So that's where we come to. I talk about it on my podcast, and the book helps as well. But honestly, this is just putting a message over that these days, as good as you are, you cannot afford to be a well-kept secret. There are so many people out there that are as good or better than you technically, but the people that get chosen, that get hired, that get promoted, that get engaged, are the ones that push themselves a little bit more without being too salesy in an authentic way by building a personal brand that makes them the go-to choice for what they do. So that's the backdrop that we find ourselves in today. Your watchers are looking at the screen there, so we can find a little bit more about Rob Brown, and I'm happy to chat to anybody on LinkedIn as well. But that's the background I'm coming from, and hopefully we can speak some wisdom to your audience today.
And before I move on from this, you do have a North American event on June 6th. Do you want to tell us about that a little before we get going?
Sure. Thank you for that, Randy. I bring accounting influencers together every now and again for some virtual networking. So myself and a lady called Deneen Dias, who works with Infinite Ties, we are bringing together influencers in the accounting space to talk about what accountants are doing, what are they buying, where are they hurting, what trends are taking place. And it's a great opportunity to build your own profile and personal brand and connect, because networking is a big part of personal brand. Your brand becomes very much who you know and who knows you. So there's a link we can put somewhere in the show notes, Randy, to get people to sign up. And by accounting influencer, I mean you might well be an accountant who is influential. You might be a vendor, a coach, consultant, trainer that influences accountants and has their ear. But it's for people that want to engage with other people and talk about the accounting profession generally. So that's going to be on the 6th of June. It's a Friday, and it's going to be, I think, 12 noon Eastern or around there. And we're going to bring people together. We've got about 50 registered already, and it'll probably double, just to chew the fat and build their connections and talk about what's important. So thank you.
Yep, no, and I've been on those multiple times, and it's always a good time. And you run those very well, so I appreciate the way you do that. And unfortunately, on June 6th, I will be on an airplane, so there's probably no chance I will be able to get on that.
It's going to be less an event because you're not there, Randy. But actually, you bring up an interesting teaching point right out of the gate.
Yep.
You've just complimented me on something, and we get compliments all the time, and people don't take compliments well. You've just said you run those very well, Rob. You're very tight the way you run them. And I might get embarrassed by that. Some people do. They don't like being under the limelight. They don't feel comfortable. Have I earned the compliment? Are they just saying that? But this is a part of personal branding where you can lock in things like that by saying something like, I really appreciate you said that. That's something I pride myself on. That's something I work really hard at. That's something I've developed over the years. That's something I've become known for. But it's wonderful to hear you say, because I want to make you feel good for giving the compliment. And that's how I want to edify and validate you. But I also want to lock down for my own self-talk. Yeah. Hey, I've got a compliment here. Somebody said it that I value the opinion of. So I'm going to own that. And I'm going to be thankful that he said that. And I'm going to mirror that right back to him by saying, hey, that's not come by accident. I didn't get lucky. I've worked hard at that, and I'm grateful for the compliment.
Nice. Look at us. Even we're learning and teaching already. And you do have a teacher background, as you told us. Let's real quick then, before we get to the discussion, which we started already, I guess. But all these webinars are always put on by Trimerit. So just a quick, Trimerit specialty tax firm. It's a firm I started 18 years ago. In fact, I didn't even realize this, but we're 6 days past our 18-year anniversary. I completely forgot to, congratulate everybody on 18 years. But yes, we just passed our anniversary. We deal with credits and incentives. We support tax advisors by helping them lessen the tax burden and increase cash flow for their clients. And then one last thing before we get into this deep discussion. Bridging the Gap Conference, I'm guessing many of you have heard of this. Our conference will be July 22nd through 24th in Denver. That QR code will take you to the registration, or at least the conference page, which is, you see at the bottom there, btgconference.com. I think Haley might be able to put that in the chat too, or the Q&A, so you can get a link there and look at it. If you're interested, early bird pricing expires in 18 days or I should say after 18 days. March or May 31st is the last day for early bird pricing, which is $9.99. It goes up to $11.99 after that. So if you want to come, and Rob is a big supporter of the conference. In fact, Rob will be interviewing some of the speakers coming up here shortly, and he'll be putting those out on his platform. So we appreciate, Rob, what you're doing there. And
it's definitely one of the go-to events, Randy, in a very crowded calendar of events. It is one of the standout ones. So I get right behind you on that.
Yep, and thank you. I'll take that compliment, and I appreciate you.
We work very hard on our event, Rob. Yes, it's something we pride ourselves on.
It is, and so thank you. All right, so today this is what we're going to get into. I'm going to just give you the quick topics. We're going to touch on all of these at some level. It may not go in this order, but the shift to personal brands from corporate brands. We'll talk about the power of authenticity, which I think is super important. Opportunities for firms, best practices for branding, how the intersection of technology and branding play into this, challenges and missteps, and then if we have time, we'll talk about some case studies and what the future holds. But with that, Mark, if you want to just put Rob and us on, and we'll take the there. All right, so Rob, so one of the things that you had sent to me, and I'm going to read this over here, but according to a LinkedIn study, 82% of people are more likely to trust a company when its senior leaders actively engage in social media. So when they're out there, when they're being a brand to the company. And so I guess my question is, It sounds like we've had this shift, to more personal brands. And so why are personal brands becoming more influential than corporate brands in the accounting profession or professional services in general, I guess?
It's such a great question to ask. We know that personal brands are outpacing corporate brands in terms of influence and importance within professional firms, certainly. And we're in such a hyper-connected world. The clients that are attracted to a firm, the talent that is attracted to a firm, what are they drawn to? They're drawn to expertise, authenticity, a trustworthiness of individuals rather than a logo, rather than a faceless entity. So your stat about LinkedIn is fascinating. 82% of people are more likely to trust a company when its senior leaders are visible and vocal. There's something called the Edelman's Trust Barometer. It's a global standard of a measurement of trust throughout the world. And it asks, what do people trust? Who do people trust? And we find that trust in the government is at an all-time low. Trust in politicians, trust in the education system, trust in the legal system, trust in the health system, trust in relationships. Divorce is at an all-time high. So we're getting this dearth of trust in the world. The Edelman Trust Barometer showed that 63% of employees trust their CEO less than they trust their own peers. So this highlights the critical need for individual leadership voices. So we're discussing this shift to give individuals and firms some clues on how they can leverage their own personal brand to be better with the client relationships, be better with the talent, and really to stand out. So that's, I guess, why we're seeing a shift to personal brands. People buy people, not logos. Trust is a human thing, isn't it? People won't necessarily buy Tri-Merit. They'll buy Randy Crabtree because they've heard about you, you've been talked about. And decision makers, particularly people with budget, they want access to expertise and personalities and people and authority, not a faceless brand. We trust what we can see and hear and engage with. And you can't engage with a big corporate brand or a logo or a website. It comes down to transparency and relatability, doesn't it? Personal brands, it's people. So you see them, they're transparent, they're relatable, they're authentic, they are familiar, they are friendly, and they create an emotional connection, which I'm not saying corporate brands can't do, because we've seen people queue outside the Apple store because they are emotionally involved in that purchase. But generally, particularly in the accounting finance world that we're in, Randy, people get that emotional connections come from people in a way that they don't come from brands.
And I'm going to just announce that the first polling question is up, so I'll make sure everybody gets your responses in there. We'll leave that up there for a minute or two, but Rob and I are going to keep going. All right, so based on that, then what you were just saying, that the personal brand is important from a trust standpoint and a feeling like you're connecting with somebody, but having that trust level. But like the example you said, Tri-Merit and Randy, I mean, they still, if I am, the personal brand, let's say, or the face of, which marketing seems to have made me that, of Tri-Merit, it still has to be equated. I mean, there still has to be something that they're going to trust me on. So I can't just be Randy Crabtree on the bubble. I have to be Randy Crabtree attached to, Tri-Merit or to the corporate name still, correct?
Yes, correct. But think about referrals, which are the currency of growth for many accounting firms. How do you get your business? We get business by referral. Fantastic. Right. It is problematic in that you're relying on third parties to dictate the speed of growth of your business. However, referrals are good because it means you're doing something right. However, I promise you, very few people will say, in referring your firm, they won't say, talk to Tri-Merit. They'll say, talk to Randy at Tri-Merit or one of your colleagues who they know personally, because of this declining trust in institutions, in corporate brand. We know that social media and digital platforms have made personal visibility scalable. You can be everywhere at once. Now, as Simon Sinek said, if you're everywhere, you nowhere, you can spread yourself too thinly. You can overexpose yourself, but the social media.
Are you talking directly to me there when you said that?
Not at all. You're the only person I'm looking at right now. But no, you're not what we might call a personal brand tart. Right, in that you're out there everywhere, because we know those, Randy, don't we? We see them out there. They would go to the opening of an envelope. They are here, there, and everywhere. And I wouldn't call them an influencer very much. They've got metrics maybe with followers and likes, but are they really moving the dial? Are they saying anything original? Are they Are they affecting real change? Are they changing thoughts and opinions and actions? Maybe not. It's all about them and how popular they are. Now, there is a popularity contest going on here because a good reputation allows people to choose you instead of all of their other choices, including the choice to do nothing. So you want to be in that mix.
Yep.
So we've got this social media play where personal visibility becomes scalable. Gone are the days where you would be known by people in the corridor at your firm. You would be known by people in your neighborhood. You would be known by people in your business community because you go to networking mixers. You can be known globally, and you actually are. And many accountants are these days. We're in a global market. And audiences they crave stuff that's real. How much fake stuff do we see out there?
Right.
Stuff they can't trust. So we trust individuals who show up consistently and speak in their own voice. That might not be very popular. I don't want to bring Trump in necessarily, but Trump speaks his mind.
Oh, yeah.
He has no filters.
Nope.
And that draws people to him. I'm not saying he's right. I'm not political, but people are attracted to people that speak in their own voice. And there is a lot to be said for that driving and a shift in trust and engagement and a distrust of brands and corporate. We saw a guy assassinated in New York recently, didn't we, as a head of a healthcare company? Right. Goodness, it wasn't so much him. It was his company that he ran, and people distrusted the brand. So he took the fall for that. Yeah. So we've got this decline in trust. And where does trust come from? If you want a recommendation for something or someone, Randy, you will go to your peers. You'll go to your friends. You say, hey, do you know anyone that's good at this? Or what app would you recommend for this? You wouldn't necessarily go to Google now. And if you do go to Google, you look at the peer reviews and the testimonials and the Trustpilot and everything else that's going on there. And you'll say, right, what are people really saying? I bet when you go on Amazon, you'll check out the reviews of the people that have bought it to get the real lowdown on what's happening, because we trust people more than the messages from the corporate brand.
Okay, and then let's talk about, because you've just were mentioning that too, and it has to be real, has to be authentic, and the power of being authentic when you are this personal brand. I mean, if you are, there's examples out there of people being outspoken but you don't feel their authenticity. So let's talk about that power of authenticity and how that plays into it.
Well, let's give you an example. We know authenticity shortens the trust curve. If I'm going to buy from you or engage with you or share something with you or be vulnerable with you or give you any time, then I need to know that I trust you. You have my best interests at heart. We could do a whole show on trust. And when people know you're authentic, they know you're real, they know you are genuine, they feel like they already know you. There's a familiarity there. So an example like this is, let's say that your kitchen is flooding. You burst a pipe. Now, you could go to the Yellow Pages or wherever you go and call up a plumber. If you get a plumber on the phone, what 2 questions would you ask that plumber?
How quick can you be here and how much does it cost?
Exactly right. But let's say you call me. You say, hey, Rob, my kitchen's flooding. I need a plumber. Do you know a good one? And I say, yeah, call Jim. Here's his number. Mention my name. Yep. You call Jim up. What 1 question do you ask Jim?
When can you be here?
Yeah. What don't you ask him?
The price?
Yeah, because we've got now this borrowed authority, this borrowed trust. I trust Jim, so you trust him now, and that shortens the trust curve because we kept it real. So that's important. Another aspect of trust is vulnerability. So there's so much gloss and hype and, I don't know, that slickness you get in Hollywood these days where everything's got to be perfect. Look at me and you right now. We're working from home. I've got a bit of a messy backdrop here. You've got no backdrop at all.
Yes.
You could be in a hotel room or a back bedroom somewhere, but it's real. This is the world we're in, and people prefer vulnerability over perfection. It shows a certain humanity. It shows a certain, not that you don't care, but you're not interested in putting on a front. You want people to judge you by what you're saying and how you come across rather than your background. We don't want that marketing polish that often comes out. And finally, I'd say about this, and then you might have some follow-up questions. Authenticity makes relationships sticky. People follow leaders. They follow people that they resonate with, that they feel understand them and their problems and speak their language and talk into their world. We follow that more than we follow sales pitches and these corporate messages.
Yep. I love the vulnerability aspect. This is my hot topic for this year, and probably going forward is vulnerability. It actually will be the major theme of my keynote at Bridging the Gap this year, because I think it's so important. I think it is a overlooked superpower, really. It's not a, it was always looked at as a sign of weakness, or not always, but people like, I can't show a weakness. I can't show that I don't know something. I can't show that I don't have all the answers. I'm a leader and I have to be strong. And all the studies out there show that's completely opposite. If you're authentic, like you were just saying, if you're real, if you're not afraid to, just look at this from this standpoint. Innovation won't happen if you don't feel comfortable failing. And if you are up there and like everything has to be perfect, the people that you're leading are not going to feel comfortable failing. So I love the fact you brought up vulnerability. I could go on. I'm not going to take the stage because this is yours, but vulnerability is key.
Well, here's an aspect of that, Randy. You and me have both been on the record with our strokes, and we've done an interview together and talked about that and our journey through it. But if I'm following you and you're a leader and you're perfect, it is really hard for me to step into your shoes and operate in that shadow, because you are up there, you are on the throne and you are God. But if you make a mistake or you're struggling with something or you don't know the answer to something, that makes you a little bit more accessible to me. So that's what we mean by vulnerability. It's not admitting necessarily that you're weak, but we're all contending with something. We're all struggling with something. Nobody lives a perfect life. Nobody's got everything sorted. And if you try and fake that or pretend that, people are just not going to believe it. It's a crazy world out there, and getting by and getting on and getting ahead is tough. So let's admit that we've got things going on, and despite that, we are doing the best we can. And that makes you more credible and followable as a leader, a thought leader, a personal brand. And in that regard, I will then trust the things that you say and the things that you do, and I'll take on your recommendations, and I'll be more open to your thoughts and insights. That changes my mind. That makes you a thought leader and the opinion maker. You prompt people to take action. That's believable.
And so just because I mentioned a few stats, I actually just had an article published on this in the Minnesota CPA Society's magazine. And University of Binghamton, is that in the UK? Am I saying that right?
Binghamton? No, that's
Binghamton,
not in the UK.
Binghamton. How do you
Binghamton,
say it?
no. That's
not in the UK.
No,
okay.
We've got a Southampton, but not a Binghamton.
Okay. Well, they had a study that showed that leaders who were prepared to show their vulnerability were 60% more likely to build trust within their teams. So exactly what you're just talking about, the trust level. All right, so let's pivot then from that, because if we're going vulnerability, I'll never stop. So we're going to move on to the opportunities now within professional firms. How can we really empower the people we're working with to build personal brands without really losing that corporate identity? I mean, if everybody at Barometer is going out to build their own personal brand, how does that still allow the corporate narrative to exist?
It's such a great point. The first thing I'd say is not everyone from Trimerit will go out and build their personal brand, because this is not for everyone. When you talk to CPAs, they did not come into this game to sell themselves. They came into this game because they loved accounting. They love crunching the numbers, and many people are just made to be in a dark room with a spreadsheet and a laptop and a computer, and they do the stuff, and they're brilliant at it, and they're technically superb. And you don't always want them client-facing. They don't want to be out there. They don't want a brand at all, and they really feel they've got nothing to say. Now, we could challenge that, because even the most introverted person in the world will influence thousands of people in their lifetimes. However, the opportunities for firms are to amplify their corporate brand by having brand ambassadors that will lead the charge. You put a question in there.
Yep. And yes, just let everybody know poll question number 2 is up. So make sure you get your answer in. And that's my only announcement on this. Rob and I are going to continue, but just make sure you get your poll answered. All right. Sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
No problem. So we're asking how can firms empower their employees to be more intentional with personal branding without losing the corporate narrative. Well, first, it comes from leadership. You've got to be having your leaders make an example of what that looks like. So if your leaders are visible and vocal, it will encourage you to do the same, because as an employee, what interests your boss should interest you. What your boss is doing, you should also be doing. And you don't need to be particularly ambitious to do that. You just need to be diligent. So we're kind of giving them guardrails and not handcuffs. So we're setting some principles rather than policies. We're setting some expectations. We're setting some examples so that it is good for you to have a personal brand, and it's good for the firm to have a personal brand. You want to be more well-known internally. Forget the external exposure for a moment.
Okay.
Particularly, you get a bigger firm. There are people in your firm, as we work remotely, that may never have met you. They don't know who you are. They've never met. They don't know what you do outside work. They know that you might have a job title, and they might have seen you on a Zoom call or a Teams call, but never really met you. So being more visible and vocal internally is good for business. It's good for culture. It's good for bonding and engagement, driving that. But then externally too. So celebrating personal success stories as part of the firm story is a key way employees can do this. When I ask firms, do you do great things for your clients? They all say yes. Are your clients really happy with what you? Yes, yes. How do you know? No, they tell us. What exactly are they happy about? Well, they love the great work that we do. Can you give me an example? So when you drill that down, the CPAs, the advisors, they will give you examples, but there's all these success stories that never get told. So when I go to an accounting firm's website to choose, maybe I want to swap accountants. Maybe I've outgrown my last one, or my last one is not proactive, responsive enough, whatever. Maybe they're old, they're not embracing technology enough for whatever reasons. And I'm looking around. Yes, I'll go to my network and say, who does your accounting? Who looks after your books? Who advises you on this? But also I'll go to websites. And it's a real shame that you can go to 100 accounting firm websites and most of them will say the same things. They'll make the same promises. They'll have the same fonts and the same colors. They'll have the same values. They'll have the same mantras. We're client-centric. We're technologically savvy. Well, all of these things, Randy.
Right.
And if I'm talent, I'll go to your About Us page and I'll look at all your team people and I'll say, this is Brenda and she works in the tax department and she's been with you 13 years and she graduated from Yale and she does CrossFit on the weekend. Okay, that's great. But there's so much I'm missing about Brenda that makes that not a real person. There's so many success stories. This is how I got here. This is what I love doing. This is how I work with my team. This is why this is a great place to work. These are the kind of things we do for our clients. These are the kind of things our clients say about us. And I want that to come alive. And the best people to tell those stories is not the firm, but it's the individuals that have that relationship with the client. So yes, we can align these personal brands to the firm's purpose and values and culture. So we don't negate the corporate brand, but we start to tell more stories. Yep. And we're not good at that.
No, and what you just said is is perfect. And you said this at the beginning too. I mean, every CPA firm out there is good at what they do. I mean, for the most part, you're not going to be the greatest CPA in the world. So how do you differentiate yourself? It's these stories, it's these personal branding that makes a difference. So I couldn't agree more, because I'm, hey, am I really good at R&D tax credits? Yeah. Is there probably somebody as good as me out there? I'm sure there is. So what differentiates me then? And why is somebody going to call me? Obviously.
Randy, I've got news for you. Out of the CPAs that do the tax stuff that you do, you are 1,418th in the list of technical competency. But you know
I'm surprised I'm that high.
I'm making that up, of course, but you see my point. People don't care. You are good. And there's nothing to choose between the top person and the 1,000th person and the 10,000th person. So who do you go to? Right. You go to the one that you have an affinity with, a familiarity with, a trust with, a bond with, you can resonate with, you feel you might get along with. Let's say that. You might like. There we use the word like. Yes, because likability is a precursor to trust. you are more likely to trust somebody that you like.
Right.
There are very few people you can think of that you trust and you don't like.
True. I can't think of anybody.
And you trust most of the people you like. Now, you might like some people and not trust them because they're idiots, but they might be great fun to be around, but they're technically incompetent. But what we've got here is it doesn't need to be about Randy as a vulnerable guy and his personal life and his kids and what he does outside work. That's not necessarily a personal brand. And I don't like the way LinkedIn has become like Facebook. Mm-hmm. I saw an influencer recently. I call him an influencer, but I lost a bit of respect for him. He put a post up on LinkedIn that said, "I've just completed my first jigsaw."
Okay.
And I thought, this is an accountant. He runs a good accounting firm and he's a mentor to accountants. So he runs masterminds. And I thought, why is that relevant? Right. Why is that adding value? That's something that belongs on Facebook. I really don't care that you finished your first jigsaw.
Right.
And we see all these selfies and post and a post and then someone taking a picture of themselves. And I'm thinking, put that on Facebook. So we don't necessarily need the personal narrative. I understand that play to people need to get to know me. People want a relationship with me. They want to know what I'm doing. Yeah, okay. But you can build a personal brand by talking about the things that you're passionate about and the great stuff that you're doing and the event that you went to and what you learned from that. And you had an interaction with a client recently and what came out of that. And you turned this around for a client, or you learned more about this, or you studied this report. And there's so many different ways to create content and be an authority and share an opinion on things that doesn't necessarily delve into your wife and 2 kids or the fact that you like Lego. It doesn't matter. You can bring in that occasionally. I'm not a fan of these self-congratulatory posts. I'm proud to announce that I've now got a new role here, or I'm proud to say that I've won this award. Well, really, that's just backslapping. Now, Muhammad Ali, the famous boxer, he said, "It ain't bragging if you've done it."
Yeah.
So I don't mind so much people bragging, but I'm not concerned that you won an award. I'm concerned why you won an award.
Yes.
I want the story behind what you did to get that. Now, if they did more of that rather than just showing someone with a trophy or a certificate, I'd be much more impressed. So to answer the question, how can firms empower employees to do this? Well, set good examples, make it an expectation, make it easy for them to share and put stuff out there, and ask them in their performance reviews, hey, do you have an interest in being a little bit more visible outside the firm? And how well known are you inside the firm? And have you got stuff to say? Are you passionate about a cause or a crusade? It could be, I'm passionate about women in accounting or diversity in accounting. It might not be something around the firm, but they still could have a cause that people will get behind or align themselves to. And ultimately, when people look at your website and see you on LinkedIn, you want them to identify with you and say, that's somebody I can get behind. That's somebody like me. That's somebody that shares my thoughts, my values. That's somebody I can trust. And firms can go a long way to making this intentional.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in for a second, because what you just said there about the jigsaw made me think of something, because I was like, okay, that you could do that, but then you equate it to something. And this is how, I relate this to what we're doing in business. And I just wanted a good friend of mine, and I think you know him too, Terrell Turner. I've always said he can turn any situation into a business lesson, but he's got a personal brand. Everybody knows Terrell, at least, all the people I know Terrell, but then he could take that jigsaw and then turn it into a business lesson, which that I think helps build a personal brand, because now you're helping with something. You're showing.
Well, that's a wonderful example. And I was in Charlotte, North Carolina just recently and had the pleasure of having a meal with Terrell and talking about stuff, because we'd been on each other's shows. So that's a great shout out and a wonderful example of how it needn't be about you. It could be about what you've learned and about your journey, but we need an application of that. It's like these preachers that stand up in church and espouse the Bible and say, this is the Bible and this is what it says, but we really want the life application. So, okay, what do I go away and do on Monday when church finishes on Sunday? So Terrell's great at that and making it applicable to real life. It's not enough just to say, here's what I learned, but it's more to say, in completing the jigsaw, Here's a couple of things you can do when there's something that you're really proud of achieving, or there's something that you didn't think you could do, or you've done something for the first time, or a challenge there. There's lots of ways you can make the content applicable to real life, because yeah, people want to be entertained. People even want to be educated, Randy. But ultimately, we don't want more endorphins in our brain necessarily. We don't want bigger brains. We want to be better. We want to do something better. We want to be better today than we were yesterday. We want to upskill in some area. I want you to change my mind. I want you to provoke me to do something or stop doing something, rather than just flick a switch in my brain that doesn't really change anything.
So let's move on then to best practice, because you started talking about, hey, you know, LinkedIn's become Facebook in ways, and so let's just, like we used Terrell there, for example. Are there steps now that you can do to start building this personal brand within your firm? And I guess tied in with that, are there best places to do it? Like LinkedIn's a space, Facebook's not, Twitter is, and Instagram. I mean, is there platforms that make more sense? But yeah, the steps to do it and where to do it.
Well, let's start with the second question.
Let's get the polling question up.
Let's get the polling question in. Are they
Polling's
still
up
here?
there. Yep,
Yeah.
everybody. Okay, people are still here. So answer the polling question, and Rob's going to keep going on that answer.
So we'll talk about the platforms first here. Have you noticed how back in the day, Randy, you would know what you would get on YouTube, you would know what you get on Twitter, you know what you get on Instagram, you know what you get on LinkedIn, and you know what you get on Facebook, because these were well defined. But all of these now blend into one another.
Yep.
So you get long form video and short form video on LinkedIn, and then you get shorts on YouTube, and then you get images on all of them, and they're all becoming each other. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad, it's just a comment. LinkedIn is non-negotiable for business professionals. It's where the decision makers hang out. YouTube's good. It does build trust, and you can get over a personality, and you and me are on video right now. Video is the currency for attention, particularly the younger generation. So we might put that out there. But honestly, I would go to two places. One is where your audience is. And I ask people, what do you want to be famous for? Who do you want to be famous with? So go where your audience are hanging out. But the second is go where the technology is that you understand the best. So I know people that have got famous on Twitter or X, and that have got famous on Instagram, and they've avoided LinkedIn or worked Facebook because they're more comfortable in that environment. So don't try and learn a new platform that you're uncomfortable with. The best technology is the technology you know the best. So let's stay with that one. But not just the platforms, speaking, writing, sharing stories, anything you put in writing is going to help you, because author is the root word for authority, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah.
So anything you put in writing, you've written books, Randy, you put a lot of great thought leadership out there. So what's the plan then? We've talked about where we might show up, but you've got to decide what you're going to talk about, what you're passionate about. It could be a number of different things, but clarifying your niche, your area of expertise, you want to be known for something. I see so many people that are haphazard, throwing mud at the wall with their content. And one week it will be a post about this, next week it's something totally different, next week it's an image, the next week it's a video, and they're all over the place. And you can't really get a handle on that as an audience for, if I see some content by this person, what am I going to get? Particularly YouTube channels, they're all over the place. You should be able to land on a YouTube channel or a LinkedIn profile and say, right, if I see content from this person, from this brand, I know what I'm going to get. Because people don't like having the time wasted, and they will not go through the rigmarole of trying to figure out what you are trying to say. So a little bit of clarity on your message, what do you want to be known for, what crusade, what passion, what skill, what area of expertise. You've doubled down on tax. And you probably even niched within tax, haven't you? Because tax is very general in itself. So you get these micro niches. I'll give you an example. In the medical world, you know what a dermatologist is, right?
Yes.
Now there are there are now sub-epidemial dermatologists that specialize in a particular layer of the skin. You used to get ENT here in the UK, which was ear, nose, and throat specialists.
Yep, we got it.
Nowadays, you just get audio or ear specialists, because we get so much more involved and deeper in the niche. So we get lots of specialization. So that's the first thing, is picking your lane. The next thing is doing something consistently. Could be online and offline, but visibility is the strategy here for survival. And frequency is also part of this. So doing something and then nothing again for 6 months, where's the momentum there? So if you're going to go for this and work on your personal brand, you've got to be ready to have some tumbleweeds for a while and no comments, because it's not about you and your following and how famous you are. It's about being consistent with the habit and being frequent. You can confidently put stuff out there, Randy, but you've earned that right. There are times when you put stuff out, I'm sure in the early days, and there was nothing. It was crickets. But you took the hit because you believed in what you were doing. So that consistency, that frequency, and then sharing insights, not just information. I see so many posts where people will just put, here's the latest government document on this, or here's the latest tax regulation on this, or here's the latest white paper on this. Well, great. But I'd much rather you gave me some insights on that information, or some interpretation, or some commentary that positions you not just as a reporter or regurgitator of that material, but more as a guide. Somebody that's giving me the lowdown on that, the skinny on that, so I don't have to wade through it. So there are a million ways to build a personal brand.
Let me ask. Oh,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Randy.
Let me ask you a question, because you've made me think when we're going here. Because so, do I have a personal brand? I guess I do. Is my personal brand associated with Trimerit? Yes, everybody knows that I'm with Trimerit. But what do they know me as? Sure, they know me as a specialty tax expert, but as much and even more so is somebody that's going to go out and talk about vulnerability in the profession, or mental health in the profession, or people first culture. So my brand, even though it is supporting Trimerit, a lot of times is different topics. Than I'm not out there talking about tax credits all the time. I can. Am I doing it wrong? I mean, is that a way to build a brand where I'm out talking about things that don't have necessarily anything to do with taxes?
Yes, it's the short answer, but I'll give you an example about that.
Yep.
And just before I give you the example, you've honed that message over time. You don't have to stick in your lane. You can change lanes. Look at how many times Madonna and people like that have reinvented themselves. I don't talk now so much about what I used to talk about, and you've honed this message of vulnerability in the profession because you've made that your own, and you've become the standout authority on that. But you wouldn't have started out that way. Right. You'd have cultivated that and curated that over time. I'm thinking of Ed Kless.
Yep.
Ed Kless worked on the books at Sage for many years, but Sage gave Ed Kless free rein to get out there and talk about whatever he wanted to talk about. And with Ron Baker and Veritas and the stuff they were doing, but that drew attention to Sage.
Right.
So you can go out there and talk, and you are an ambassador of your brand, because every time you talk, it's Randy Crabtree of Trimerit.
Correct.
And Randy Crabtree CPA. So it should shine a light on your employer and your firm or your brand or your company and your product and service as much as it shines a light on you. So you are well within scope, and your firm, I know you're the co-founder at Trimerit, but your employees, your bosses, your owners, founders should be giving you not quite a free rein, because you don't want to damage the corporate brand, but they should be giving you scope to get out there and talk about what excites you or what burdens you, what annoys you, what agitates you, what disrupts you, what wrongs do you want to put right, what myths do you want to bust, what topic do you want to shine a light on? Where do you want to help and guide businesses or whoever your audience is?
Yep. Okay. I just needed some self-analysis there. So thank you for that. So let's go into then, if someone's building this personal brand, what are challenges in doing this? So that was one of the questions I had just there. Was this a challenge? Am I doing this wrong? So maybe some challenges or missteps. What are common mistakes that people are making in attempting to build a personal brand? Is it just too me, or what are the things we see?
Pardon me. I was hoping you'd talk a little bit more, because I've got a migraine and I've just taken a couple of headache tablets. So I'm being vulnerable.
Look at you. This is
I'm
you're
functioning.
powering through this.
I'm functioning.
All right.
So you're asking me the barriers
Yep.
to building a personal brand.
Yeah, barriers,
Certainly
challenges, missteps.
the barriers to entry for doing this have long gone. There is such a low bar now to get in the game.
Okay.
But the problem with that is noise. Because if everyone's out, not everyone, but if a lot of people are out there curating a personal brand, then it does become really, really noisy out there, and it's difficult to reach any particular audience. But if you may have heard that phrase, you only need 1,000 fans, 1,000 true fans to start a movement. You don't need to be followers of millions. There's a footballer called Cristiano Ronaldo, has 1 billion followers on Instagram. And he gets paid $1 million to just put a message out and everybody follows it. I mean, it's crazy, but we're not talking about that in this game. We're talking about it being accessible for people. So one of the challenges, I think, is if you're going to go into this, be strategic. We talked about consistency already. I wouldn't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to build a personal brand. What shall I write about today? What can I put a LinkedIn post up about? What can I do a quick video about and put it on TikTok? I would say, right, what am I going to do for the next 3-6 months? What am I going to talk about and what themes? It's almost like you're writing a book. One of the best ways I was ever told to write a book is to come up with a working title and then write down 12 chapters of what might be in that book. So you write the contents page. And then under one of the chapters, just put down 2 or 3 bullets that you'll cover in that. And then the next chapter, put 2 or 3 bullets in the story that you'll cover in that chapter. So you could pick your lane with a topic that you wanted to talk about or a couple of different topics, and then you could break them down. So you've almost got, and you could use ChatGPT or AI to help you with this in the brainstorming and the content creation of it, to say, right, I want to be known for tax in the construction industry in the Minnesota area. Give me 12 topics I could talk about that would hit this.
Right.
So we've got it right there. But then you say, okay, I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to make sure I either batch this and set an hour aside and create these 3 posts that will go out 3 times a week, or I do a little bit each day. So consistency. Don't post twice a month and expect to lead the field. So that's one challenge. Another problem I see is people playing it safe. And accountants, I understand you're in the business of risk management. So you do want to play it safe. You don't want to be controversial, but there's stuff you can call out, this shit that's going on. And being too safe, too generic, vanilla, bland, it doesn't work. You've got to have a point of view. You've got to take a stand. You've got to be willing to not so much be controversial for the sake of it, but people want to see and hear something a little bit different. Otherwise, you just become more noise. So consistency, being a little bit more dangerous, if I can say that to an accounting audience. And then people think personal branding is self-promotion. We've already hit this, you and I. There are so many self-promoters out there that just shout. Right. They've got a megaphone and they've got a platform, and I'm going to be damn well famous if it kills me. But they're not creating value. So thinking intentionally about how you're helping the audience and not getting too wrapped up in the metrics. Oh, I've only got 1 like and 1 share on that one. That must mean what I'm talking about is invalid. No, you've got to play a long game, and let's judge where you're at in 90 days and not 1 week. You've been at this a long time, Randy. You are the wrong side of 40 now, and I'm not scared to say it.
63, actually.
Yeah, as am I. I'm getting there. So
let's just announce the poll real quick. Sorry, Rob. Sure. Poll's up. That's your last poll. Just make sure everybody answers that last poll. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you. So we're not saying we're going to do this for the next 10 years, but we're certainly saying we're going to do this for the next 90 days. So let's stick with it. Let's see if we can get away from the self-promotion side and be a bit vulnerable, but how are we creating value and how are we changing lives and how are we getting people to think or act a little bit differently? If we can get around those missteps, I think your audience will be on the right lines.
All right. I think there's a couple more things. I mean, we are getting close to wrap up time, but a few more things I think we'd like to touch on, maybe some examples and what the future, what you see the future holds. So let's go in some, I mean, do you have an example of a firm or individual that is really successfully leveraged personal branding to grow their business?
I like what BRC have done, Bernard Robinson and Company. They're a firm in North Carolina. I worked with them. They wanted to stand out in the talent market, and they knew that their leaders needed to take a stand on that in coming on video and talking about why their firm was a great place to work. And I interviewed a lot of them because they were more amenable to coming on and doing a conversation with me than they were in turning a webcam on. That is intimidating. I get that.
Yep.
So I asked them some questions, and it came out this idea of a forever firm. It turns out that the firm had a higher than average number of female partners, which spoke to the diversity of the firm. And they also had a higher than average tenure of people that had stayed there for a long time. Now, that's interesting in itself, but what's more interesting is why or how they'd achieved that. So they got their leaders to build their personal brand and go on camera and tell stories about, here's why I joined the firm. Here's why I've stayed. Here's how I've resisted the temptation to go somewhere else, even though I get approaches from recruiters on LinkedIn weekly. Or even better stories, here's how I came from a senior role in another firm to be a strategic hire for BRC. Here's why I came over to BRC. I felt I was disillusioned. I wasn't creating a legacy. It became all about the numbers, how I wanted to make more different, whatever it is. But those stories, those people created personal brands, not just as we are a great firm to work for, but I am a great boss to work for because these are the values I espouse.
Right.
So when people applied for jobs at that firm, and they did get a real uptick in applications for vacancies and submission of resumes, the applicants almost felt like they knew the people they were being interviewed by. They knew what their leadership style was, and they wanted to work for them. And that concept of a forever firm, nobody really likes jumping firms, but they'll do it if they've got a bad boss or they're not valued. So building employer brand was a brilliant vehicle for them to create these personal brands talking about that employee value proposition.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great example. Well, is there like any others or just specific lessons in general?
I'll give you one more, actually. In fact, I'll give you a couple more real quick. There's a guy called Anshul Agrawal. He's an outsourcer based out of Toronto, Canada. I've worked with him too, just to tell some stories about, we know how crowded the outsourcing space is in the accounting world. Now, he's very good at calling out bad practice, but he's also good at opening up Argentina, which is an interesting market in South America, but because the traditional markets would be, say, the Philippines or India or maybe even South Africa. But given it's the same time zone as North America, he's opening up markets there and he's done visits there. So he's creating a whole narrative around that. So that's Anshul. He's at June 15 Consulting. And there's one more guy I've really got to give a shout out to. He's called Chris Johnson, CGA Accounting, and he specializes in 401k audits. You can find his firm extremely passionate and doing a lot of amazing stuff with AI. He went public recently with giving a $50,000 sign-on bonus for a new hire.
Wow.
Now, what a story that creates. And I interviewed him about it. And he was so intent on getting the right person that really got him and his values and the way he leads and mentors his people that he was comfortable giving a $50,000 sign-on bonus, as well as a great package. Now, he's eloquent. He's passionate. You can get him talking on one question for 10, 15 minutes, and reining him in is the problem. But he's there with his beard and his brand, and he's just so passionate about what he wants to do. He makes you think, this is a guy I want to work for.
Right.
This is a guy I want to get alongside. This is a guy I want to spend more time with or hear more about. And it's just that he loves what he does. And I see so many accountants that love what they do.
Yep. Well, then how about the future? Let's go into, we've hit our 50 minutes, so everybody's officially got CPE and nobody's leaving, so they're enjoying hearing what you're saying, which is nice. But how about the future? What do you see, the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, technology involved and AI, I'm assuming things are going to change. What do you see happening with personal branding?
A couple of things, Randy. We know AI is flooding the market with content. So personal stories and experiences is going to amplify that content to make it more penetrative.
Okay.
We're getting very good bullshit meters, aren't we, at reading AI? We
yeah.
know what's artificial and what's real. So we've got to be mindful of that. I did a podcast on my own show recently about remaining authentic in a world of AI. So let's